Hi guys, Craig here. Welcome to another edition of the podcast, Tell Craig Your Story. Today we'll be speaking to Rugby League journalist Steve Mascord. Now, Steve is born in Australia, but is now living in England. He has worked as a Rugby League journalist with AAP, the Sydney Morning Herald, the Daily Telegraph, has also been on Triple M radio and ABC radio as well. In 2017, he was the author of the book Touchstones, which talked about the 3 R's: rock and roll, rugby league, and the road. It's a great story about how he did 52 rugby league games and 52 gigs. And he's also a music buff as well. He's done quite a lot of music interviews. He has a podcast, White Line Fever. And he also has his own business, Mascord Brown, which sells rugby league merchandise. But before we go, please go to our website. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Tell Craig Your Story. We have a link there which tells you where Tell Craig Your Story podcast is streaming. We are on Google Podcast, Apple iTunes, Spotify, to name a few. And also, we are still running our competition for the Tell Craig Your Story podcast theme song. You have until the end of the month to hand your submission in, and I will announce the winner early next month. All right, here we go. This is my talk with Steve on Tell Craig Your Story podcast. Hey Steve, how are you going today?
I'm great. How are you, Craig? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, good. Thank you for your time. I know you're a very extremely busy man, but I've been asking the question with everybody, at the moment with the coronavirus. Are you staying safe in England, and how's it all, progressing over there? Is it getting better or is it staying the same?
Yeah, it's weird, Craig. At first, firstly, this is the earliest plug on record perhaps in any of your shows for anyone for anything, but I'm doing a book at the moment. And so for me, I was on the couch anyway all day. The only thing that really changed for me is that I couldn't go to the gym anymore. Instead, I went for a run. And without going off on a tangent, I'm actually surprised at the health benefits of running outside as opposed to going to a gym. It's pretty amazing, actually. I expected I'd get really fat, and I haven't so far. Touch wood. So nothing much changed for me. But at first here it was pretty scary. Like when you went outside. Like one time I went down the storeroom to get some stuff for Mascord Brown's, another plug. And I put the communal keys to the storeroom in my mouth. And I was just convinced I had coronavirus. You know what I mean? I was thinking, I must have it now, because at first everyone was really scared. And I went to the post office and the guy says, "Is this essential to the stuff I was sending?" And I was like, I don't know. It probably isn't, you know what I mean? And so I didn't go back to the post office for 2 weeks. So I started posting stuff in the post box and it was getting lost. But by the time I went back, this different guy behind the same window said, "How's business? Good." He was like, it feels less scary now, even though there's still obviously enormous risk of getting it, and I'm still scared of it, and I'm still, totally down with the lockdown. But yeah, the biggest difference I would say over the maybe 40 days or more, it's almost 2 months now, is that it doesn't feel like you're sort of stepping onto a Martian landscape when you go outside. It feels like you
grass
just
is on fire. Birds are falling out of the sky.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You feel like you just got to be careful now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, that's good to hear. Like with Australia, it's they're slowly starting to lift the bans here as well. So let's hope it gets away. And it's also stopped our favourite sport, me and you. It's stopped the rugby league. So can you remember a time where you haven't had a rugby league for this long in your sort of rugby league career?
Yeah, at the beginning of the 1990 season, I went overseas for the first time, and I'd already done 2 seasons at AAP. I went overseas. I went to the Hockey World Cup and then went to the States for the first time, and I missed I went to the Challenge Cup final, my first Challenge Cup final. I didn't come back until like June, so I missed like the first 2.5, 3 months of the season. So I guess when I came to England, there was still rugby league, and I was getting to as much rugby league as I could. But I've had this before, and this is going to surprise you. I don't really miss the actual games. Like not really. Like I don't. I wouldn't watch every single game if it was on anyway. You know what I mean? Like, right. And I'm involved in projects around rugby league, and strangely enough, at this point, pausing to watch a game for an hour and a half is kind of like an annoyance. So, yeah, I don't get to Friday night and go, oh, geez, I wish Super League was on Sky. Or, yeah. I don't. When the NRL starts again, I'll watch it out of mainly curiosity, and I probably will finally shell out for a Watch NRL subscription because they've created this amazing plot for them that started in Wuhan to create scarcity of rugby league. But really, I haven't. I guess I haven't had. It's been 2 months, and I guess that's an average off season. So I'm not like, I haven't watched a single game replay on social media or YouTube or whatever. Not a single one.
Do you still have the passion for NRL than you did when you say like in the 80s and the 90s?
No, not for watching it. I've got a lot of passion for the game, but the passion is for trying to work on projects and to try to progress it and change things a little bit. You would almost say now that I'm so obsessed with rugby league, I don't have time to watch it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, when you called, I was, on a conference call with some guys talking about nines I've got like this merch company and I'm still writing a little bit, and we got the streaming for Super League this year, Jimmy Smith and I, in Australia.
That's great.
I'm almost like, my ideal sort of scenario for watching a game of rugby league now is probably in a corporate box with a beer in my hand, and being able to miss important parts of the match and not care. That's my ideal scenario for watching rugby league now.
Like we're all at the social side of it.
Yeah, I'd rather have it as a relaxation. Like there's still not many things I'd rather watch for fun. I still like to watch rugby league for fun, but I'm just not obsessed with the watching side of it now.
Right. So when did it all start? When can you remember going way back? When was your first season of NRL or rugby league? That was was it New South Wales Rugby League?
Probably even before that, probably Sydney Premiership. I would say in 1979 I went to a trial match at Dapto Showground involving St George. I think St George may have played the local team, the Dapto Canaries.
Right.
I'm not from Dapto, by the way. I'm from Windhag. Which is the southern suburbs of Wollongong. Not much room for western suburbs in Wollongong. There's the mountains are just right there. Yeah, and I went I went with my uncle and my dad. And then in 1980, I went to more games. 1980, I think we spent Mother's Day at a St George game at Cogra. Went to Lidcombe Oval for a West game. I think it was also against St George. 1981, I remember going to Cronulla and asking the Mullane brothers for their autographs. Well, they came back from the warm up. And the bloke said, after the game, mate. And and then 1982, Steelers came in, and that was perfect for me because I was just starting high school, and suddenly there was Sydney Premiership, or then it was New South Wales RFL, and then they dropped the F the following year, just New South Wales Rugby League. Yeah, so then I was able to go to games not only every second week. Me and my mates from school, we'd catch the bus into town and watch the Steelers train. And we went to a lot of away games, not all of them. But we went to their very first away game at Sydney Sports Ground. I remember that quite well. Caught the bus up, and it all kind of went from there. I kind of was never one to do anything by half measures, and so I couldn't just sort of casually be interested. I had to be obsessed.
Yes.
And yeah, that kind of obsession with as many matches as possible, that lasted until about 3 years ago, really.
Right. Yeah. So you were a Steelers fan growing up?
Yeah, I was. Funnily enough, my favourite colour as a kid. When you're a little kid, you do have things like favourite colours. Was red, And so my favourite team was St George, and I don't know why, because they had less red than Norths. But
That's right.
But my second favourite team was Norths, and I used to like it, and I vaguely remember liking it when Illawarra played in the old Tooth Cup or the KB Cup, because they had no, it wasn't KB Cup, it was definitely the AMCO, it was AMCO Cup.
MK Cup, yeah.
Yeah, they had the country divisions played in it, if you remember. In fact, Wally Lewis made his first grade debut against Illawarra before they were the Steelers in the midweek cup for Valleys.
So they would
but
come
they had
down
more red than anyone else. Even before they were in the Sydney Premiership, I liked them because they had more red than anyone else. And so when they finally joined the Sydney Premiership, they were the reddest team of all. So as a little kid, that was ticked a lot of boxes.
Right. So with Illawarra, obviously they merged with the St George Dragons. Like for the people living in Illawarra, was that like a bit of a sad day for the Steelers?
I can't tell you because I wasn't living in the Illawarra then. So I was already in Sydney and I was already working as a rugby league reporter, and so my emotions were almost
Neutral.
zero. It was a story, to me. I remember the last Steelers game though. I remember we went to against Canterbury, and there was a really, really remote possibility they'd make the finals that day if other results went their way at the last round of 1998. And they didn't win. They put up I'm trying to think. Maybe they won, but they didn't put. I can't remember actually the result. I should remember it, but they didn't make the final. So the season was over, and they all went on their Mad Monday. And I remember I went over to I went to a pizza place, and there was a former player there called David Banks, second rower. Used to wear the tape around his head, and there was some other people around, and I covered the game for Sydney Morning Herald, and then I remember just chasing the Steelers around all night. So I would go to one pub and they'd just been there, and then I'd go to another pub and they'd just been there. And I remember they ended up at the Spanish club at Kembla, which is down in sort of between Warrawong and Port Kembla, where I had my 21st. They actually ended up down there because it was still serving alcohol quite late. And I even went there, and they'd gone. And the rumour was they'd all caught a cab to King's Cross, and which would have been about $250. So I remember the very last night, the last night of the Steelers, and that has an emotional resonance to me more than the actual merging with St George. And when they merged with St George felt like my team only when they wore the Steelers strip, strangely enough. So I can't be angry because I wasn't living in Wollongong at the time, and I didn't feel, but St George Illawarra could never feel like my team because it wasn't my town anymore. I never lived there when they were around, so I never made that sort of emotional connection,
And did you ever play league yourself?
Very, very poorly. Poorly. and without courage. I played. I played Windang Pelicans under sevens, and I started when I was 5 playing under sevens. I think my mum remembers one time I offered an opposition player with a runny nose a handkerchief. That's the sort of kid I was. Bleeding heart lefty. And then I played for the school. I was a poor player, but one thing I had in my favour for about 6 months was that I had a bit of a growth spurt. So I was bigger than everybody else. So like in order to play tackle footy down the beach, one time I had to play against 4 of my friends because I was just bigger than everyone else, just for 6 months. And it was that was my sort of captaining Australia.
Give the ball to Steve.
That was a height of my. I don't think it was in the off season. Sadly, when I was bigger than everyone else, I never got to actually use it on the field. I just used to play in the park against like 3 blokes, and then suddenly they all caught up and overtook me, and I had no skill and no courage. So it was back to where I started.
Back to where you started, yeah, right. So, I was sort of similar. I'm a little bit younger than you, but I was the same. It was the Newcastle Knights for me. When they come into the competition, it was like, yay, finally we've got a team here in Newcastle that we can sort of support. And what I wanted to ask you was, I saw that you were doing like a new project about the Super League, and you were trying to get people. You were trying to talk to people about that sort of period of time. Is that true?
I'm writing a book, which the working title is Two Tribes, and it's about 97. So it starts on October 4, 1996, with the full bench of the court overturning Justice Bursett's outlawing of Super League, allowing Super League to start, and it finishes around Christmas Eve 1997, just after the NRL was formed at the Sydney Football Stadium. So it's the origin story with a small o of the competition of the NRL, which is a story that never gets told because we all want to forget 1997 because it was corporate war and all that sort of stuff.
Never, Steve. Never, Steve.
Yeah.
I can never forget 97. That was our.
No. Yeah, well, that's the only thing people want to remember. The only thing people want to remember is Newcastle's win in the grand final, and that's it. But it was actually it gave us a lot of the things we have now in the game. A lot of the rules gave us the judicial system we have now, and there are a lot of funny stories. I mean, I don't know if people swear on your podcast, but a quote.
That's okay.
A quote which will be in the book is, someone stood up and said, "Oh fuck, we're all going to die." I'm not going to give away. I'm not going to give away any more than that, but that is a genuine quote from the book from the incident in 1997. So, wow. And I grew up knowing a lot of stories. Back then, not to say grew up. I either am not grown up now, in which case I wasn't then, or I was grown up a long time before 1997, one or the other. But I knew a lot of stories at the time because back then the media, the people in Super League and the people who worked at the New South Wales Rugby League, crime reporters will tell you the same thing. We drank with the cops and we drank with the criminals. I'm not going to tell you which group is which in this metaphor, but and so I heard a lot of funny stories at the time, like the Gary Pearce, who was there. And I've got to be careful talking about it, not to give away much, but Gary Pearce was the former Wallaby who was a marketing manager.
Yes.
For Super League, and he was actually sacked after one round because instead of going to the first game, he went to the Opera, and it was one of those kind of Jason Deef being sent home and Gordon Tallis fighting Terry O'Connor, and a baggy green cap being stolen by a Canberra player from the dressing room at Headingley. All these 1997 stories. It's one of the ones that you heard at the time. These stories should actually be kind of emblazoned in rugby league folklore. They're such great stories, but they're not because it's 1997. Everyone wants to forget 1997. So, as an example, I tracked down Gary Pearce. He was with his family, his entire extended family, his kids and his grandkids on a farm in Bermagui for lockdown. I tracked him down and I asked him, "Did you go to the Opera?" I'm still trying to find Aaron Raper and Tom Rodonicus about Aaron Raper being left on the bench. I was there in the Hilton on the Park after the game when Johnny Raper confronted Tommy about not putting his son on the field. Right. So these stories it's been really a wonderful experience to be able to speak to these people. It's funny thing is, I'm like, there's been examples, Craig, where I've gone, does anyone know how to track down Fred Blogs? And then I put it in my Facebook, and Fred Blogs is my Facebook friend. You know what I mean? Like, it's like that. These are people I know from 23 years ago. Yeah. So if I get on the phone with David Gallup, it's like, I actually, I know David Gallup quite well, but so it's not so much the same. But there are examples of like people I know and get on with quite well, but haven't spoken to in years, and I'm talking to because of this book, and it makes me appreciate how I've spent most of my adult life, which is something that I probably, when I moved here full time, I might have tried to forget, not that I was ashamed of it, but I wanted to move on from it, and I didn't want to be that guy. You know what I mean? So by going back and talking to these people, it kind of gave me an appreciation of maybe, appreciation that the time I spent, when I got out of school to a couple of years ago was probably time well spent.
It was such an interesting time too. I mean, like there was periods there that we didn't even think, as a Knights fan, whether we'd have a team. That they were talking, do they go to Super League? Do they go to stay with the ARL? And then all of a sudden, the Mariners come into the competition as well, and then it's like, do I follow the Mariners, the new team, or do I stay loyal to the Knights? So it was all happening in that period. But do you think the Super League sort of was a good idea at the start, or was it,
That's
bound to?
you're trying to get the end of my book before I'm even finished
Oh,
writing it.
sorry.
I'm not
Sorry,
going. I'm not going to offer that opinion.
I'm giving too much.
I think we'll answer. I think we'll answer that question. Well, I haven't. My opinion is still in the process of being formed. I've tried to forget what I thought I knew and learn from the people I'm speaking to. So I don't know about how other people write columns, but if I sit down to write a column, I don't know how it's going to end. I don't sit down to write Discord or whatever and go, this is going to be my payoff line at the end. I arrive at the payoff line when I arrive at the end. So I'm having the same, by writing, it makes me think. So the same, I'm employing the same process with the book. So I won't know the answer to that question until I kind of write the last line of the last chapter.
But how inspiring is that, not knowing, and finding out all this information? It could be anything. I think that's,
well, the good thing about it is that you find out things about processes from some people you're speaking to 23 years later that the other people who were also participants and also in the room at the same time didn't know. I mean, that's the most amazing thing. Like, who was actually the P for Neil Whittaker's job? Who was the guy who was supposed to get it if not for the opinion of this guy? Well, I'll be able to tell you that. And Neil Whittaker doesn't even know that.
Right.
I spoke to one guy the other day who said he thought he got on very well with his workmate. Well, that guy got him sacked. He still doesn't know that to this day. But I can reveal that.
Wow.
In the book. I can reveal that in the book. It's gathering momentum, and I'm really into it, but I can't spend all day on it because I've got other things happening, and
Yes.
so it's a time management issue. And one thing you find is if you love rugby league and you've got to watch every game you possibly can, life gets confusing when you kick that addiction because there's so many other things out there trying to demand your time, and so many interesting things that want you to give them your attention. And now I'm finding that time management at the age of 51, time management is the biggest challenge in my life, really.
It's a big world out there, isn't it?
Yeah. We can only stay out there. I'm looking out there at it now, but one day we'll be out there in it again, I guess.
Yes. Hopefully in the near future. So let's go back for the people that international listeners. You were a journalist at an early age, and you got a cadetship at the Australian Associated Press. Is that correct?
AAP, Australian Associated Press. Yes.
Right. So when did you sort of realize that this is what you wanted to do as like a career?
I never did.
I
never realized. I never did. I just wanted to be involved in things that I thought were cool. So I was into footy and into swapping footy cards, and I realized I couldn't play. We've already discussed that. And I never heard of anyone being a club secretary. That's what they were called back then, straight out of high school. I thought, well, I'll start interviewing people and sending stories away to magazines or whatever. And so I didn't decide I wanted to be a journalist. I decided I wanted to be around things that I was inspired by. And inspired is even probably overstating it. I was just a kid who wanted to be around cool things.
Yes.
So footy was cool. So I just wanted to be around it. I wanted an excuse to be around it. I didn't want to be a hanger-on. I wanted a reason to be there, So people thought I had a reason to be there, and they talked to me on a decent level. You know what I mean? So that's how it started. And that's why I haven't, even though I enjoy explaining journalism to people outside journalism, and I enjoy giving advice to journalists, young journalists who maybe don't get told why they're doing things, only how to do it. I don't have it in me. I don't have that sort of thing in me where I want to fight for the truth for my whole life. I don't, I take it seriously when I'm doing it. It's like Neil Whittaker said when I'm doing the book. Neil Whittaker hadn't done a rugby league interview in 20 years. Wow. And he said people couldn't get it that when I was a Balmain chairman, I was about Balmain, but when I was the CEO of the NRL and the ARL, I was about those jobs, not about Balmain. Everyone thought I must have an agenda because that's how it works in rugby league. And, I'm like, when I'm a journalist, I'm really serious about it. And and I'm not going to poo-poo my reputational cachet or integrity. If I have to go back and write about someone who I'm also doing business with, or I'm going to be the journalist again when I put the journalist hat on. But I don't have I don't have this passion to tell the truth and fight for justice my whole life for the rest of my life. And I never was one for crusades. I can only remember maybe one time my whole career as a journalist where I wanted to expose someone for their wrongdoing. I don't have that in me. It's just not my nature. I just want to do the job thoroughly.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And do you think being like a freelancer now, that helps you doing that? Like, you don't have the pressure, like, and especially with your book as well, you don't have like a time frame either. You can sort of do it in your time.
I'll tell you what, Craig. It's very. Most people look out the window I'm looking out now. They would see quite a blue sky. I only see a big dark cloud with the word book written on it. I do have a massive deadline. I mean, it's one thing to have a deadline to get 500 words in at 7 o'clock. To get 80,000 words in on July 7 is a much bigger pressure. So I definitely still have deadlines to worry about. Freelance journalism, I don't want to be doing it. I mean, really, I now realise that after 2 years here, I do realise that you can fight so hard to make an impression on people with a new thing that you don't really know how to do and you're just learning how to do, and it's really, really hard. And I know that I can make more of an impression on people by writing something now, and I realise that I should write every day. I do realise that, but writing stories is not part of my plan to achieve anything else at the moment. It's not where my focus is. So I'm not looking for a kind of easier way to do journalism. I kind of started off 2 years ago looking for a way not to do journalism at all.
Right.
And now I'm kind of happy to do it, and to do it, I hopefully still have some integrity when I do it, but I'm not. It's not the focus of my day.
Yes, understand. And speaking of which, have you adjusted now to living in London?
I always adjusted to living here. I like living here. The thing is to get a routine of that where you can make some money and your day is manageable and you're happy at the end of the day, the week, the month, the year with what you've done. And that is still what I'm trying to achieve. I feel I'm closer. I feel I'm closer now. As far as living here is fine. I enjoyed coming back last year. It was like a great holiday. And it was really, and I achieved heaps in a short period of time. So it was great. And I got back here before the hit the fan. So that was good. But I don't want to go off on a tangent, but basically, this stuff that's happening to us all at the moment is like, from my point of view, speaking personally, I've been flying around the world and blowing money and drinking and eating and polluting, for my whole life. If the rest of my life is spent in this square 2 miles, I'll be fine.
Yes.
Really, I'll be fine. I don't have I've actually quite liked not leaving this square 2 miles and just enjoying working hard and enjoying the simple things, a nice meal, a jog in the evening, company my wife, I'm happy if that's the way things stay. But I know that a lot of the projects I work on, the projects I'm working on require people to put on a boot and play football or go and have a gig or put out a record. And so
we'll get to that soon.
Yeah. So you know what I mean? So it's a weird sort of thing where you say, am I comfortable living in London? Yeah, I'm so comfortable that I don't care if I don't never go anywhere else again. But I mean, but that's just personally. But then again, the projects I'm working on require other people to go and do things outside of 2 square miles of their house. So therefore, in the end, I'd be unhappy because they wouldn't be going and doing those things, and all my plans would be for nothing, if that makes any sense.
That's right. Yes, totally understand. Yes, and I guess you're getting back to the simple life, really.
I think we all should. I think we all should. Like, why do we need to spend all this money? Like, why?
Yeah, that's right.
Why?
Yeah.
If we can eat, if we can get fresh air, and we can exercise our minds, enjoy art, then why do we need all the things? Why do we I know so many people. Like, I totally appreciate. I'd be in trouble, if I wasn't here. I wasn't with my wife. She's got a good job. I wouldn't be able to be so altruistic because I would be struggling to pay the bills. I'd be struggling to eat, and so I wouldn't be able to be this altruistic, and I acknowledge that straight off the bat. But having said that, whatever you need to eat, and whatever you need to stay in touch with your friends and family, then all the other stuff, why do you need it? You know what I mean?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
What is capitalism? The economy and all that sort of stuff. Like, why do you need it? You know what I mean? So that's what I get out of this anyway.
And that's my thing as well. Like, we're telling people now to wash their hands and to, start doing online work. Why weren't we doing this from the start? You know what I mean? So let's go back so after you worked with AAP, you joined the Sydney Morning Herald, and I want to ask about, and I know you probably get this question a lot. I want to know what it was like going on the '94 Kangaroo Tour.
Oh, that's a big question. One of my favorite stories. Well, there's a lot of stories, but yeah, there was one story I remember. I got back then. It was fax machines, and Sydney Morning Herald. Well, I've given up the punchline. Damn it! I got an.
We can edit it out. You can start again.
I got a call from downstairs. From reception that said you've got a mail here from Sydney Herald. It's spelled SIDNEYHARLD. But no, it was obviously an awesome experience, and I was talking to a mate of mine called Mike Westlake, who's a journo, and he covered the 1997 World Club Challenge over here, and he said, he goes, my routine was I'd catch the blokes coming back from training at the lift. I'd go and write something, and the rest of the day was my own, and I did that every day for 2 weeks.
Right.
And it was more intense than that covering the '94 Kangaroo Tour, I can assure you. There's so many aspects of it.
That Mal Meninga try just sort of sticks in my mind. That try to win it, that was just an amazing try.
It was Bozo was a coach. Bob Fulton was a coach, and he's a pretty overbearing kind of figure. We socialised a fair bit with the players. The journos hung out together. There were enough of us to hang out together. I remember Peter Folingos. There were 5 or 6 of us. Peter Folingos said it'll be the greatest experience of your life before it started, and I thought, geez, this bloke needs to get out more, because I'd already travelled a fair bit. I've been around the world a few times, He used to say I've been around the world more times than Yuri Gagarin. But he actually was right, and there was nothing about the places you go, because rugby league is played in a lot of ugly places, Yes. But it was about the camaraderie with the guys, and Daniel Lane and Jeff Dunn and Bevan Hannon, Dave Mason. These guys are sort of friends for life. From that trip. Yeah, it was a wonderful experience for me. I was new at AAP, new at the Herald. I switched. I told Jeff Dunn Springfields in King's Cross at about 2 a.m. One night that I was leaving AAP, and he was going to be the chief league writer at AAP and was probably going to go on the Kangaroo Tour. Right. And I went to the Herald mid-season, and I was still used to being an agency reporter, so I was just about don't get beaten on a story each day, and that was an impossible task too, because Peter Folingos was very tight with Bob Fulton. Gotcha. So he would get stuff early and blah blah blah, but I also didn't know about writing colour and writing features and stuff, so I was kind of pretty straight down the line on the tour. So from the Sydney Morning Herald's point of view, it probably wasn't. I wasn't a success on the trip, probably.
So how did you do it back then? Like in '94, were you sending was it a fax or?
Yeah, you would fax stories back. Yeah, you'd type. Actually, I'm trying to remember. '94. I didn't have a typewriter. No, I had a little kind of machine that would with an acoustic coupler. So it was like the early version of a laptop. And it had suction cups that went onto either end of the phone, and it would talk to the computer in Sydney using the suction cups and the tones, and it's called an acoustic coupler. And I think you had a local number as well you could dial into, because it was very expensive to call Sydney and send a story. It was really expensive. But we were staying in like five-star hotel for 2 months, So that was back when newspapers had money, we were staying 5 stars for 2 months. And I remember the first day of the Kangaroo Tour, actually, we all got our rooms, and my room was on the same floor as the players. and I was
Yes.
like 2 floors from Mal. And I went down to reception. We're all going for something to eat. And I said to Peter Flingos, I'm on the same floor as the players. And he goes, get moved. He said, get moved. You don't do that. It's
Really?
just part of the rules. You don't do it. You leave them, give them their privacy. You don't go on the same floor.
Right.
So I went, okay. And I did. I went to reception and I asked to be moved. Yeah.
And it's just not the same now. Like if the Australians were to go over there now to England, it just wouldn't be the same. They're so professional now. Is it difficult to sort of get interviews with them over there, or do they have like set times, or with media?
It's been so long since a full Kangaroo Tour happened here.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
No, what happened is, I covered the Four Nations a couple of years ago.
Yes.
I think I covered it for the Herald, or I covered for the Herald, and it was pretty stage managed, but you can still get guys on your own.
Right.
But you do have to arrange it, and they get snaky if you just go up to the guy and ask him yourself. And basically your job is, I don't want to, this is a rabbit hole, but your job as a reporter. As a reporter, I'm here sitting in my lounge room to represent to you, Craig, what happens in this lounge room for you because you're not here. And
right.
if I want to ask my wife a question, I don't need to go through her media manager to ask, should I ask her a question?
Gotcha.
Because it's my job, is I can ask anybody any question. It's their choice whether they answer or not. So the whole thing of the media manager is keeping the media in the box and controlling the message. Yes. And it actually stands in the way of the public's access to information. So I became increasingly frustrated with that, in my final kind of year in Sydney.
The whole cliche answers,
and also and the political type operation where you would have off the record briefings from spokesmen. A spokesman said this, a spokesman said that, and it wouldn't even be able to be in direct quotes. They'd try to dictate to you how it was reported. And so basically, if the spokesman for the NRL, for Todd Greenberg, says the sun won't come up tomorrow, it's the end of the world, and the sun does come up, then people will just think you made it up because you didn't quote anyone, you didn't put a name to it, and so under that sort of system, governments and ministries and now sporting organisations are able to sort of float stuff in the public arena and use the reporters as a patsy, and if it doesn't fly, if it's unpopular, they can just shrink away and go, oh no, we never really considered that. And because it was all off the record, the reporter has no comeback to say, well, you told me. Who told you? You didn't quote anyone. So I hate that system. The way I came up was you have a quote in the third paragraph. And I would rarely write a story, and maybe much to the poor, and my editors to this day would probably chastise me for this and say I wasn't a complete reporter because of this. But I would rarely quote someone. I would rarely write a story if I didn't have a quote in the third paragraph. If someone told me Joe Blow is joining, the Darwin Crocodiles next year, I actually would not write it until I could ring Joe Blow or I could get the Darwin Crocodiles. Like I would, and that is now the fuel in the engine of sports journalism is transfer speculation. So I just wouldn't survive today, But I had before me John McDonald, who I saw when I was back in Sydney, great guy, John McDonald, reporter at the Herald. He believed that it was the club's role to announce a signing, and he just wouldn't even chase a transfer story. He believed it was the club that it was up to the club to announce it, and he's just a different vintage of dinosaur to me. I understand that as far as the way things are, but nevertheless, I always tried to get a quote in the third paragraph. And obviously there were many occasions when I wrote sources say, but geez, I didn't. It was the same thing as my footy career. It was a lack of courage. I didn't want to be held responsible. I didn't want to be used as someone else's patsy, and I didn't want to be held responsible for something that was super controversial. And I couldn't say, well, he said it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it was, as much as it isn't being high-minded and ethical, it was probably really just being a bit lily-livered, and as much as anything else,
Yeah. It's very, very interesting how it's all changed. It's a bit like the NRL, how it's sort of transformed into a very different NRL rugby league now. So let's get back. So you were at the Daily Telegraph from 2006 to 2008, and this is when I started listening to you. I can remember way back on ABC Radio. It was my opinion that I preferred listening to the ABC Radio. I just liked how they had it. They had a lot of passion with the commentators commentating on the radio. Peter
Wilkins.
Peter Wilkins. Yes.
I didn't work with Peter very much. I mainly worked with David Morrow and Warren Ryan and all the other guys.
Oh, yes.
The other guys around at the same time. So Jerry Collins and
Right.
and Tim Gable, and the guys, who. But yeah, so that was the kind of my era at the ABC. That
yeah,
era.
right.
And I never felt. It's funny that people say that, like like you did when you rang me. Oh, you just listen to ABC. Like for me, it was like it was extra money on the weekend, and I was always quite nervous, because
Really?
when you're on the sideline, it's hard to get comfortable because one time I was on Triple M. And they didn't come to me till the 28th minute of the first half. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you're sitting there going, and so you kind of never really get. It takes a while to get comfortable because if you're part of the commentary team, you're talking from the start, and it's like me talking to you now. I mean, imagine if your podcast now had been going this long and I hadn't spoken yet. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So it's like, and I'm going, I hope when I do talk, I don't say the wrong thing. You know what I mean? And that's what it's like being on the sideline,
Yes. Wow. Yeah. I just really, really enjoyed that part of your career. So, and you've also gone on to be a part of a podcast yourself, doing a host of the White Line Fever. Is that still going?
Yeah, people say, is that still going, which is kind of bad. But they're actually White Line Fever. No, it's not bad. It's bad on my part because it's inconsistent. But there has been 2 rugby league specific White Line Fevers in the last 2 weeks, so it's actually in a bit of a busy period in its kind of 10-year history at the moment. But it was White Line Fever was originally, I wanted to mix rock and roll and rugby league, and I wanted to try to get it on radio, or I wanted to try to get it on digital radio or something like that.
Yes.
And it never, it always stayed a hobby.
Right.
Just recently, there was a bit of, there was some interest from the music side from mainstream radio in Australia just over the summer. But the guy, I'd never heard back from the guy after a couple of emails. But White Line Fever is now White Line Fever Kicks, which is a rugby league specific White Line Fever. Jimmy Smith and I do it every other week now. So
Nice.
So Google it. It's on White Line Fever podcast, and you'll see, as they say, on your favorite podcast platform. It is there, and it doesn't cost anything to hit a subscribe. And I'm a hoarder of brands. Like I kind of like, if I start something, I never let it die. Right. So I used to do a column on the street called Loudmouth. And Loudmouth, Loudmouth hasn't appeared in print since 1990, but I've still got Loudmouth Twitter, Loudmouth Facebook, and I always think that one day when I get time, because I don't think there's many columnists in the rock and roll space. People don't write rock and roll columns like they write sports columns. You know what I mean? Like, how disgraceful is it that Motley Crue ripped people off with a farewell tour, and now they're back screwing people again.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like so, and so no one writes that. You know what I mean? But in sport, there'd be 10 people writing that. So my vision for Loudmouth is to write Loudmouth every week and to write like a sports column about hard rock and heavy metal. So yeah. Anyway, so White Line Fever will never die, because even if we don't do a podcast for 10 years, if episode 200 and episode 201 are 15 years apart, there'll still be episode 201.
I just had something similar as well. Like I recently went to check my Myspace from my old rock band. It's been all deleted now. So
I actually started putting, before the internet was like when I was at News Limited, and again, you skipped over asking about my time at News Limited, and actually there's not much to ask because they were pretty good to me. You know what I mean? I had one or two stories that were beaten up a little bit, but I mean, they were pretty good to me. I don't really have a lot of complaints. But stories were rewritten and stuff. And I remember there's one story rewritten that upset Cameron Smith. And when I was at News Limited, I used to put all my stories on MySpace as I originally filed them. And
Right.
and you imagine that now. I mean, you
Yeah.
you get sacked on the spot. You know what I mean? So I was able to show Cameron Smith, here's what I actually filed because it was on MySpace.
Right.
And now it's gone the full circle where archives are like part of like what I probably going to be doing for the rest of my life is try to leverage my back catalogue like I'm a band or whatever. And so if all those old stories on MySpace are worth something to me now,
Oh,
but
definitely.
they're all gone. Like
Right.
they're all gone. MySpace just bang, delete. So
I think they sent everybody out an email to say if you haven't checked it in the last 3 years, then it's gone.
yeah.
But anyway, so speaking of rock and heavy metal, you brought out a book in 2007 called Touchstones. Touchstones.
Yeah.
I love this. I love this motto: teaching the 3 R's. Rugby league, rock and roll, and the road. The road. So in it, you did 52 games and 52 gigs. How did you do this?
Well, from the rugby league point of view, I had to tone it down to only do 52 games in a year.
That's true.
But the trick was to go to a game a week in the off season, and the hardest trick was to go to a game a week when I was getting married. So I had to like miss. I think I had to do like a Sunday of one week, and then the Saturday at the end of the week after, and get married in the middle. I think that's how it worked. And as far as the gigs, it was good because I went to see bands I wouldn't otherwise go and see. Like I don't really like Clutch. I went to see Clutch. I went to see the Buzzcocks. I wouldn't normally go to see the Buzzcocks. Yeah, it was.
Broadening your music horizon.
It was, and I ran into people at those shows that I knew or had a story about. Like it was like a good. I'm glad I went.
Yes.
So yeah, but it actually ended up being a very small part of the book, really. It was almost just they were just little panels, spread out among the pages. The book wasn't about going to 52 gigs and 50.
Yeah, that's right. That had like your family background as well. But what I wanted to ask was with those 52 games, what's the most obscure place you've watched a rugby league game? I mean, it says you've been to 18 countries watching rugby league. I didn't even know there was 18 countries playing rugby league. So
the international. If you go to the International Federation website, I think the rankings go up to pretty close to 50 now.
Really?
So I haven't, I haven't even scratched the surface. I've seen rugby league in like on a suburban ground in Malta, where everyone, like a few minutes before kickoff, people are faffing over getting the PA working to play the national anthems, and I'm not sure the lines were even marked.
Yes.
I caught a train actually on a Sunday morning from Moscow out to Narofminsk and saw a rugby league game there, and I got off the train. Like the hard Soviet wooden seats and kids who'd been in the city drinking all night, and old babushkas shaking their fingers at them and telling them to be quiet. And I got off the train. I had no idea how to get to the ground. No one spoke any English. I had to ring Anthony Elias, who's connected to the Lebanese team, to get someone to tell a cab driver to take me to the sports stadium.
Right.
And that day I met a guy who subsequently, not to be confused with the rugby league writer Michael Chammas. This guy's called Mick Shamas, and he was running, helping run rugby league in Lebanon, and he was subsequently present at my 40th birthday, which I spent in Jacksonville on a cruise with Leeds Rhinos, and so I spent my actual 40. I actually turned 40 on the river in Jacksonville the night before Leeds played an American combination in Jacksonville. I've been to that ground. I've been to that ground, University of North Florida, for rugby league about 5 times now. So yeah, lots of obscure places. I mean, I saw
And how is it? Sorry, Steve. Well, how is it developing in the US? Is it getting a bit of a following there?
No, it stops and starts. I mean,
Yeah.
rugby league's been going in the US since the 50s. I mean, anyone who's listening who likes rugby league has got to read a book called No Helmets Required about the 1953 US team that toured Australia and New Zealand and played to massive crowds at the Sydney Cricket Ground and Brisbane Exhibition Ground. Rugby league's been trying in America since the 1950s, and it stops and
They
starts.
brought Origin over there, and
Yeah.
they had international games there as well.
I worked for the USA Rugby League last year, just writing some content for their website.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it stops. It's frustrating.
it's very hard.
Needs some
It
investment.
would be
Yeah.
It would be a very hard market to, with all their major league sports already there being so dominant. But I did hear that even recently, like when the pandemic, like we were playing, with no crowds, that they were getting like a bit of a following in Canada and US. You'd be probably the best guy to talk to about that. Is that true? Were the people?
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. People say you don't need to take on. You don't need to be number one. It's a very Sydney attitude that unless you're actually number one in the market, you can. It's not worth doing. I mean,
Yes.
if you could be as big as lacrosse in America, that would be a huge step forward. So
Yes.
for rugby league, you have to aim.
Yes.
Like you have to be realistic. Like rugby league isn't even recognised by GASF as a sport.
Wow.
Right? Rugby league is not internationally recognised as a separate sport to rugby union. So people in Australia just need to be realistic about where rugby league is on the pecking order, and it's not even recognised as a sport. So you need to. So the idea of being as big as like lacrosse or table soccer in America is still a dream for rugby league.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's a generational thing. It's not something that's going to happen next week or tomorrow. But Toronto Wolfpack have shown that you can put a foothold in one market in America. It's it's a 5 to 7 hour flight or 7 hour flight from England, and there's an infrastructure for the game here, and that's the way you fast forward it a little bit. You get some following in a certain city, So
I wanted to ask about that. How is I haven't sort of followed that much. I did watch one or two games, but how is it going with the Toronto Wolfpack? And I've read that Sonny Bill Williams hasn't been the sort of the big role model that he was supposed to be. So how is it all going over there with the Toronto Wolfpack?
Well, we're still waiting for round 8 to happen, so we only had 7 rounds. Sonny went home for 1 or 2 weeks. He was showing glimpses of his best, but the team unfortunately it's a championship team. It's a second division team with Sonny Bill Williams. So they kind of don't really have the players. You can't use the word cattle. Jimmy Smith doesn't like cattle, so it's very disrespectful. I know most people who use that term, they don't mean it that way. But I think the Wolfpack have made a big impression in Canada, but they're like the Tigers, and they're playing it like something that's smaller than Leichhardt Oval, and so people from when I say they're like the Tigers, as far as they're a suburban team, even though they represent all of Canada in Super League. I mean, if you ask the average Torontonian, if you meet a Torontonian while you're travelling, do you know the Toronto Wolfpack? I would say 4 and 5 would say no.
Yes.
But the people who live in that area, it's a student area, residential. It's only $20 to go in. If you want to go and watch the Blue Jays or the Raptors, you're going to pay $200.
That's right.
They've got a following there, like a good local following, and David Argyle's used the brand to leverage other business interests. So he sold 25% of the club to a CBD, cannabis-based resin, like wellness products. He sold 25% of the club to one of those companies that does that. So the Wolfpack are the most exciting club in the game's history. Who knows if they're going to if they're in it for the long haul? I don't know. There's only been one real successful expansion team ever in rugby league ever, and that's the Melbourne Storm. All the other expansion teams you can name are in rugby league areas. And it's cost $80 million to keep the Melbourne Storm afloat. So who knows if the Toronto Wolfpack will become the second successful expansion team. But I'm certainly excited by what they've done so far.
Yeah, definitely. And it's great for the rugby league in general that they've got another team outside of, like you said, the normal rugby league areas. It's great. Sorry, I wanted to get back to Touchstones, and let's talk about some music now. I know you're a big fan. Did you actually play in a band in Sydney?
Right, the same question. Same question as did you play footy?
Yes.
Some do and some talk about it. Sadly, I talk about it. But
Okay.
no, I'm pretty good on the triangle, but that's about it.
Because I did see the picture of you,
Yeah.
playing the guitar with a little boy there. Didn't eventuate.
Yeah, the toy guitar. I never learned to play it properly. But
Toy guitar,
if I
right?
could come back again in another life, I'd do that. Like there was a fork in the road somewhere there. I think it was like when I was starting it. I was writing a column. I was writing a column in drum in on the street. I started to get a bit too hard nosed. I was a bit too mainstream media for a music weekly. You know what I mean? And I had a choice to make there. I guess I kind of like, and I had a full-time job where I was writing. I was interviewing Dee Snider and getting on the phone in the copy takers room at 10 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I remember actually I had to turn down an interview with Dee Snider, and I had to go to. I went to Jeff Selby's funeral, and I turned it down. Jeff Selby was a great St George Anglo player who died very young in a car crash, and I had to blow out the interview with Dee
Dee Snider.
Snider 5 minutes notice. I can't do it. Now rock stars do that to journalists
Yes.
a thousand times. Rock stars, you know.
So with that, in your book, it mentions Axl Rose being with AcDc. Now, AcDC is the biggest Australian band, one of my favorite bands for a long time. What was your opinion on that with Axl Rose coming into AcDC? Everybody has an opinion.
I loved it no, I loved it. And just before we got married, we went to see ACDC with Axl Rose at in in Manchester. And
Oh, that's
when you live
amazing.
here long enough, Craig, you learn not to go Manchester
All
because
right.
it's like it just because like you know what I mean. It's the one thing, Andy. It's the one thing as an Aussie living in the UK you become conscious of. So
Yes.
I'm very careful. I go Manchester, but the yeah, and it was awesome. When they played, I think Down Payment Blues, or maybe it was Rock and Roll Damnation. I think it was. Now
Yeah.
they played Touch Too Much of Highway to Hell for the
Hmm.
first time ever with Axl. Bon
Yes.
never performed it live, and
Wow.
Brian never performed it live. And so I actually had tears in my eyes. I actually tears in my eyes when I heard those Bon Scott songs. It was amazing, and it was like a midsummer in the UK. So the sun didn't go down at all during the show. I don't think. I maybe went down the last half hour of the show. It was funny. I got gets off Simon Moran, who was promoting the show. Simon Moran owns Warrington Wolves, and he sent
Right.
tickets, and they arrived here, and I was like, and my wife said, "Oh, it was cool, free tickets." And I said, "Are you excited?" And I said, "Nah, they're in a corporate box. I don't want to sit in a corporate box." So I bought another set of tickets, stand down on the stage, and I said, "No, he won't. No, he won't notice." And he goes, "Yeah, he might notice. You're not there. You should go up there. You should go up there." So we walked out of the stadium, and the steward said, you can't get back in. I said, I'm fine. I'm fine. Got another set of tickets, corporate box tickets. Walked back in again, halfway through the show. Walked up to the corporate box, and I say to Sarah, this is a waste of time. I want to be down on we met some friends down there, and I want to be down there. I don't want to be up here. And she said, no, you'll be missed. And so I walked in, and I showed my ticket to the steward, and our tickets were right. We would have definitely been missed if we had brushed going to the corporate box. So it was a good tip from my wife.
Yeah, right. Yeah, what an experience. But and from what I've heard, Brian Johnson is back in the band. Is that true? As far as I'm aware, like he's going to record, because the last time I seen Guns N' Roses,
I think it's already
Angus
done. I think the
Angus.
album's already.
Sorry, Angus was he'd come out and play two songs with Guns N' Roses. So there's a very sort of
Yeah,
close
yeah.
relationship with them.
I envy you enormously. When you say it's a close relationship, it's in full schoolboy uniform and play with Guns N' Roses. To me, that was like a Marvel character walking into a DC comic. There was something wrong with it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
like it was kind of like it wasn't. This is my main class exercise book. Invading my book. It's just not right, you know. Yeah, it was. Where were we about that? Yeah, I thought it was great because Axel's still got the pipes. You know, he looks after his voice, whatever you think of it. He can still hit really high notes. He's an artist. Axel is an artist. You know what I mean? With all the eccentricity that involves. So I believe the album in the can, photos taken. Somehow Phil Rudd got through customs despite taking out a contract on someone's life in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And it's recorded by the record company. So it's in the can, and now I guess the record company hasn't put it out because they don't feel that they'll be able to maximise it commercially. So it's sitting in the can until the band can tour again. And if they do tour again, I believe, like I said, Cliff's back, Brian's back, and Phil's back. So
come on.
So if they do tour again, it'll go for 3 years. You'd imagine, right. And they'll go everywhere, and I'll definitely go to a few of them. I hope.
And you know what? I've heard Angus in interviews. It's just that if AcDc was to stop, what am I going to do? You know, yeah. That's the only thing that I've done all my life ever since I was a kid was play guitar. You know, so I'm going to keep playing until. And I remember when the first time I saw them play, like in probably 95 or 96, and that was saying that even then that this is, you got to go and see AcDc. This is the last time they're going to perform. So it's just great to see them at this age still rocking out, and you can't stop them. They're still flawless, even with the last tour, it was just absolutely flawless. So
I saw the first show on the Rock or Bust tour at Coachella, which was like a hipster festival in the desert.
You know what, Steve? I was actually in LA at the time, and I didn't even know it was on. I was kicking myself.
It was like my three favorite bands are Kiss, AcDc, and Van Halen. And I saw Michael. I saw Michael Schenker, who's not in any of those bands. I saw Michael Schenker play one night. Then I drove out to the desert and saw AcDc play the next night. And then I saw Sammy Hagar in the Circle back in Vegas the next night. That was 3 consecutive nights. But it was funny because like the kids in the crowd are going like, what does that name mean, AcDc? Anyway, I mean they've never seen it, never seen a PowerPoint or they've never seen the sign. And I was able to walk like right up to the front. Like I lost my space at the front. Tame Impala were the band on before, and they were horrible. They were tame by name, tame by nature. Yeah. Anyway, it was. But what the point I was trying to make is that Angus it was the first show in 6 years for AcDc, and Angus is like an athlete. He's like an athlete. The way he runs around.
Oh yeah.
And his knees were bleeding by about the 8th song. Like because he gets down on his knees and plays and walks around his knees. So it was like the first trial match or the first day back at training. He actually he had blood pouring out of his knees during the show. I took photos. I got a close-up photo of his knees. Yeah.
Crazy. You're also saying Van Halen as well. So I love my rock as well. I love my so Van Halen. Are you David Lee Roth?
Sammy Hagar in the Circle that night. It was Sammy Hagar in the Circle. So it was Michael. It was Michael Anthony from Van Halen. Sammy Hagar from Van Halen. Jason Bonham, John Bonham's son on drums, and Vic Johnson, who's been with Sammy for years on guitar. I love Van Halen. I love both eras. I even like Gary Cherone. I even like the Gary Cherone album. I was
about to say that because that was the first time that I saw them play.
96. 96. One day I saw the Steelers beat Canberra right next door. Must have been the Steelers last year, 98. 98 it was.
98,
Steelers,
yes.
Yeah. So Steelers won. I got a free hotel room off someone, and I saw Van Halen for the first time, all in one day. That was pretty cool.
I just remember that was a period there that was Pearl Jam, Metallica, Van Halen, and they were all in this period, and I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. And they even come to Newcastle as well. So
yes, I was at the Newcastle show when Metallica were there, And
Oh, really?
it was a load or the reload tour?
Reload. The
Yeah.
first.
I remember they come
show.
on with the house lights still on. So
Yes.
the house lights are still on, and everyone's just talking to each other, and then bang, they start playing.
So fucking what?
And support was Horsehead that night, who recently reformed. And Horsehead are one of my favourite. Oh yeah, Horsehead have got a bunch of reissues out on Golden Robot Records. I love Horsehead so much. And they reformed on February 1 in Melbourne and played one show. And I was actually like, I was going, can I hang on here for just another 2 weeks? You know, can I go back? But I ran out of money, and we were getting these TV rights, and so I just was like, I had to come back. But I interviewed Cameron for the latest White Line Fever music, which is just White Line Fever as opposed to White Line Fever Kicks. Has Cameron from Horsehead on.
That's great. And the other band, from that AcDc from 96, was the Poor.
Yes.
Did you get into them as well?
I saw the Poor when I was back. I saw the Poor twice when I was back in Australia.
Right.
I saw the Poor. Yeah, they had new guitarists. Actually, quite well. They had James Young, one of the Youngs, on drums when they put the record out. They've had a number of drummers since in true heavy metal fashion. I don't know if any of them spontaneously combusted, but they had a number of drummers. But they have got a new young guitarist who's really good, and they've still got Skeeny and Julian, and they're just fantastic. I saw them at Open for the Tats at Paddington RSL. That was what a great night that was. Keith Cole was there, the former Steelers great. And then actually I got in for free. I wasn't on the guest list. Keith Cole gave me a spare ticket that night. And then I saw them headline Frankie's. Leon Harrison, who's the singer from the Lazies, who are a great Central Coast band who now live in Toronto. He was there just with his Canadian girlfriend. It was a fantastic night. It was just amazing night. We got the Lazies into the Toronto Wolfpack, actually. We gave them all a jumper, put them in touch with the owner's sister, and I don't think the Wolfpack can afford them to have them play at a game, but we're going to try and do some sort of contra deal so that maybe one Wolfpack game in the beer garden will get the Lazies to play. And interesting, Leon, the singer, who's crazy if you follow him on social media, Leon Harrison, he's a North Sydney fan.
Oh, right.
He's a Kiwi, Central Coast, North Sydney fan. Who must have been, when North Sydney ceased to exist, he must have been like 10, and he lives in Toronto. So there you go. There's an extended rugby league rock and roll connection.
Right, that's great. I think I need to go to England and have a beer with you and talk music a little bit more. I think we could talk for a long time. And just finally, your other favorite band, Kiss, as well. Seen them quite a few times. My dad's got all their records, and so again, were you a fan of the non taking off the makeup, or you're just a fan in general?
Yeah, I won't say I like every era. Some Peter Criss's song on not on Sonic Boom. Peter Criss's song on, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. That song, whichever one that was on, Psycho Circus. It's a terrible song, and Peter Criss's. But I don't like everything Kiss does, and I think there's obviously they get a lot of help, electronic help with their shows now.
Yes.
As far as backing tracks and stuff like that, but But a good Kiss concert is like the best night of your life.
If you haven't seen them play before, you've just got to see them once. It's just amazing visual.
Yeah, I'm disappointed that the farewell tour hasn't featured any former members. Even if it's just Bruce Kulick, you know what I mean? Like I was disappointed that that hasn't happened. But I didn't go when they came to town. But now the farewell tour. When they came, they did play a show here. I think they played a show here, and I didn't go. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it got cancelled here in London. I'm not sure.
Right. Right. They come to us. They come to Australia, and they played in Perth, and then he had something wrong with his vocals, and then they were supposed to play at the V8s in Newcastle in the city after the V8s, and he went back to the US. So great band. If you haven't sort of seen them,
Kiss
how many
fans are like,
times?
Kiss fans I've probably seen Kiss maybe 10 times, but
Yeah,
maybe Kiss fans are like fans of I don't know, like maybe they're like NRL fans, really. They
yeah,
they love the
very
NRL, but they're
passionate.
the most critical. They're so
Yes,
critical of
that's
the
true.
NRL. You know what I mean? So Kiss fans are like, Paul, why did
The Kiss Army.
wear that outfit? Why, Paul, your voice is gone. Give it up. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? You're a fan of a band, but you want them to stop playing. But that's true. Like a lot of Kiss fans are like that. They're like, I'm a Kiss fan, but I wish they'd stop. You know what I mean? Like, and they're very passionate. They're like, some people like the Elder album from 1981.
Yes,
A lot of people just hate it. You know what I mean? A
yes.
lot of people just hate Monster and Sonic Boom. They just think they're just kind of like just come out the wrong orifice, you know. So yeah,
My first show with Kiss was the Symphony down in Melbourne.
me too. I was there.
I won free tickets, and I was down it was great. That was a great show, and I could see Molly Meldrum like in the row in front of me, and if I could interview one person, he would be one of them. I think he would have so many good stories to tell with Countdown.
I saw the
Um,
Rolling Stones. I actually was down there for that. I went to that. Then I drove out to like Mildura or somewhere to see the Storm play trials.
oh yes.
And then I came back and saw the Rolling Stones. And the Rolling Stones had charged so
Wow.
much for their tickets, right, that people were in the bleachers and they weren't on the floor. There were empty seats on the floor because it cost so much. So I spent, I guess, across those two gigs, I would have spent $900 on the two nights.
Yeah.
The Kiss ticket would have cost me $390. I remember I bought it online when I was in Boston, and the Stones, which I was able to buy quite late because it was so expensive, no one wanted to pay it. Stones cost me $420 or something like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so two nights, two gigs, about $900 worth of tickets. You know.
Wow. All right, Steve. So let's wrap it up here. Like I said, well, I think we could talk for quite a long time. So tell me, I know it's a very vague sort of question, but what does the future hold for Steve Mascord?
I hope the future involves getting things done that need doing. That's the way I done it up. Getting things done that need doing, whether it's bringing back Hot Metal or Hot Metal magazine, or whether it's getting a Nines World Circuit up and running, or whether it's getting every Super League game in Australia, including on TV here.
Love to see that.
Whether it's having international rugby league merchandise readily available around the world, and getting international rugby league to the forefront where it belongs. That's kind of that's when I had my first Monday here at the start of 2018. I just started working on projects, things that I thought needed doing. Before I was talking to you, we're talking budgets for Nines.
That is so cool.
So and before coronavirus happened, we showed games, Super League games that had never been shown to the public before live. And Mascord Browns, I went yesterday. I had eight items to post out. The day before I had 20. Unfortunately, a lot of this leads to no income.
Yes.
Or very little income. One day, hopefully, it will lead to, if you've got 4 or 5 projects that are serious businesses, and then you earn money. But I'm still 2.5 years into it, and I'm not earning a lot. But the future holds for me is getting things done that need doing, and I'm not particularly interested in getting credit for it. I know that sounds like it sounds like false modesty, but I've already got, I've already got a career that was public facing behind me,
Yes.
so I'm satisfied with that. I'm not hungry for another public facing career, but but that's what the future holds for me is getting things done that need doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Good answer. And we were talking a little bit about it before, but what advice would you give to inspiring journalists that want to follow in your footsteps?
Everyone says don't do it, don't they? That's standard. Don't do it.
Quit.
My memory. Well, I would say that is that journalism is a public utility, it's like medicine. When you're a doctor, you're not there to make money for the hospital. Okay, it's a hospital's job to find a way to turn or whatever the government agency, whatever country you live in, however the health system works. But it is your employer's job to balance the books. It's not your job. Your job is to serve the community, and in journalism, you're keeping people honest, and you're ensuring transparency, and you're holding the powerful to account. And your bosses will come and go.
Yes.
And if you do what you're told without thinking every time, you'll go when they go. The most important thing to remember in journalism is that you're not going to get rich off it, and it isn't about you, and that it's a public utility that allows democracy to operate. So the thing I've found is that if you are in the right, then the people who get angry with you at the height of your career will be your friends afterwards, mostly. And I'm finding that writing a book. That the people I get on best with are the people I had arguments with when I was a journalist.
Right.
So don't be afraid to upset people if you know you're in the right. If they did it, if they said it, if it happened, then your job's to report it. But don't do something just for clicks or an audience or a raise or a commission or because you were told to, because journalism is one of those jobs that is governed by code of ethics. It's not just a matter of do what you're told and pick up a paycheck at the end of it. And you won't last if you just do what you're told unquestioningly. And that's it. That's what I would say.
Okay, great answer. All right, so let's. I like to do some quick questions and answers. I'll go through a couple of questions here, and just give a short sort of response. Are you ready to go?
Yes. Okay.
All right. So first one, Supercoach. Are you a fan?
Oh, you mean the
fantasy football?
No, I'm not interested.
Okay. Should rep players play where they're born?
No.
Okay. Why?
Because identity is now far more complex than it was 100 years ago. So if rep players play where they're born, if I consider myself Tongan and I happen to have been born in Auckland, I don't think I should be forced to play for New Zealand. I mean, and we wouldn't have the Tongan team we have now. People's sense of identity is far more complex than it was 100 years ago. I mean, I would say to you, like, I know there has to be rules. I can't tell you, I consider myself Albanian, so let me play for Albania. I've got no connection to Albania. I understand that, right? But if I was brought up in an Albanian family and it's part of my identity, and there is and I qualify through a set of rules that it applies in the Olympics, for instance, right? Then I should be allowed to play for Albania,
Yeah.
And so,
makes sense. Yeah.
People, it's not a white bread European Caucasian world anymore, where everyone's either English or Australian. That's not the world we live in anymore. People move around all the time, and their sense of identity is different. So I don't think we can force people to play where they were born. I certainly wouldn't like to see. I like the origin rules at the moment, where you must have lived in either state before you were 13. Otherwise, you can't play at all. I really like that rule, and that's why Semi Radradra could not play Origin. He could only play for Australia. He couldn't play New South Wales because he didn't live there before he was 13. Anyway,
that's fair enough. Who will take Todd Greenberg's position?
Andrew Abdo.
Has it already been taken? Sorry?
Andrew Abdo. Abdo.
Is that confirmed, or is that still? Have they
announced
that?
No, I mean.
Okay. Women's Rugby League.
Awesome.
The NRL bunker.
Necessary.
What players are coming back to the NRL 2020 that were not? Are we getting new players? I know Rapana is coming back to play because he's coming back from Europe, is he?
No, Japan. Rugby Union in Japan.
Is there anybody else that you know that's coming back?
I don't know of anyone else, no.
Okay. State of Origin going internationally.
Yeah, 100%. Huge property. Love to see it here. Play it played at Wembley Stadium at midday with a doubleheader, England versus New Zealand, and pack the joint out, make a lot of money, sell a lot of merch.
Absolutely.
100% in favour of it, yeah.
And what's your you also have like a merchandise startup as well. So what's your most prized possession? Rugby league memorabilia.
I don't, anything I prize I'm not going to sell. So I've got like both the all golds and Australian jerseys from the centenary year 2007 autographed. I got a jersey that was worn by Chris Johns on the 1991 Tour of PNG. I'm not going to sell them. I hope the moths. I checked on the moths when I went back and make sure the moths haven't got into them, and they're still there. So, but I never gone around and get photos with people or get stuff autographed. I've only ever got one photo with a band and one thing autographed. I got a photo with Kiss in full makeup at Budokan in Japan, and that was a few years ago, and I couldn't. It's funny, in the photo, actually, my friend said Eric Singer could get you on the guest list, and when I got there, he was like, no, he can't. And in the photo, so I found my own way in and to the meet and greet beforehand. Obviously, if I got my photo taken, I got into the meet and greet just from my own resources, people I'd met on the ground before the show, and sure enough, in the photo, Eric Singer's hands on my shoulder. I'm like, get it off, you bastard! You're no use. And the only time I ever got an autograph was I got Mal at the end of the 1994 Kangaroo Tour, when everyone was going home at baggage claim at Charles de Gaulle when we come from the south of France. I got Mal to sign a Queensland jumper for my best friend Jim Savage, who was my pen pal out of Open Rugby when we were both 12 and lives in America.
Wow.
And he's still my best man. And that the only time as a journalist I've ever gone up to someone and got something autographed was that. So they're the only two times I've done that.
Wow. Well, Steve, you've had an amazing career so far, and all the best for the future. Are there any sponsors or anything you want to promote before we go?
You really shouldn't have asked that. I guess I should sort of start getting a registration of interest for the book. What I was thinking of doing was maybe packaging it up with merch and stuff I've got, my personal collection of stuff. So I can't really enjoy my personal collection because it's in Sydney and I'm in London. So it's not much use to me, really, a lot of the stuff. I'm going to keep those 3 jumpers I mentioned. Don't ask for those. You're disappointed. But so I've got stuff, and I'm going to start amassing stuff from 1997. I'm maybe going to get an autographed ball of the Australian team that toured over here in 97. I'm going to package them up with both books and sell them as kind of lots, and they'll be pretty good stuff. So I guess I would say keep an eye on stevemascord.com and keep an eye on my Facebook page, which is, I think it's /Bondi Beat, but just look for Steve Mascord on Facebook, and I'm the real Stevis, as in Beavis and Butthead, STEAVIS, the real Stevis on Twitter. And I'll start, if you're interested in the book, I'll start collecting a bit of a mailing list. That's a good idea. I only just had it now. Mascord Browns is MASCORDBRONZ. So if we only sold trousers, we'd be Mascord Browns pants, which wouldn't be good. Mascordbrowns.com or mascordbrowns.com.au for that, and it's International Rugby League merch. Heaps of stuff, great stuff. I've got a podcast, White Line Fever. I'm on LinkedIn. RugbyLeagueHub.com is where you're going to be able to watch Super League, hopefully, eventually, in Southeast Asia and Australia. RugbyLeagueHub.com. That's easy to remember. And start paying attention to Rugby League Nines because that's going to start to be very active in the coming weeks and months.
Wow. All right, Steve. I know you're a busy man, and I really, really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming onto the show today.
No, thanks, Craig. And I'll be using, if it's okay with you, I'll be using this myself to promote some of the stuff I've just been talking about. So you've done me a huge favour and made me think of things that I'd forgotten. So thank you.
Not a worries. And if I do come to England, I definitely want to catch up and have a beer with you.
Oh, definitely. That's going to be easy, although we might have to be standing 2 meters apart.
Social distancing.
Okay.
All right, Steve. Thank you very much for your time.
No worries, mate. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Craig. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.